Good morning, Tommy. How are you?
I'm just dandy, boys.
Tommy, Bear Lion on Sunday. You'll be part of the pregame show, okay?
Yep.
8-game losing streak, okay? We are
Got them right where you want them.
we are horrible, okay? We are
Got them right
terrible.
where you want them.
No, but we're terrible, okay? We're absolutely horrible, okay? We're terrible. So I just want to know,
He's the best.
Is there anything from the last game that the Bears played against the Lions that could carry over to this game Sunday? Here's Tom Waddle. Tom?
You know, it was so funny. I caught myself saying, you know what? I thought the defense actually played a lot harder in this game, and there were some things that I can kind of cling to. And then at the end of the day, I looked up at the scoreboard, and the Vikings had scored 30 and should have had 37 if Justin Jefferson doesn't drop that ball in the red zone.
Ooh.
So, but I did, yeah. I mean, the effort. I thought, at least defensively, I thought the effort was better than what we saw in San Francisco. Look, I'm searching here. Okay, I'm trying to, shine a turd, as they say. So
we're just trying to get you warmed up for Marquee and the pregame show. That's what we're trying to do. We want you to give us something because those, again, another close loss, but the offense was better than we saw definitely Monday night, wasn't it? Against the Lion?
Yeah.
Some better?
So it's just, do you realize, I know you do, but for those at home that aren't keeping track, these are their totals in the last 3 weeks in the first half. Minnesota, 101 yards, 0 points. San Francisco, 4 yards, 0 points. Detroit, 53 yards and 0 points. That's a total of 158 yards and 0 points in the first half collectively in the last 3 games. That averages out to 52 yards and 0 points in the first half per game. I don't know. I mean, there's people that call into our show and want me to be more positive. I'm trying to reach for something, and I put a list together. I've lost 8 in a row, right?
Yes.
Quarterback has been sacked more than any other quarterback in the league, correct?
Yes.
Fired their offensive coordinator 9 games ago.
Yep.
Fired their head coach a couple weeks later.
Yes.
Last 3 weeks, they gave you their totals offensively. The ineptitude in the first half. The defense has allowed 30 points per game in each of the last 4 games, which is the most in the league, correct?
Yes.
Coming off a year where you fired your OC, right?
Yes.
Had to dismiss your DC and your running back to coach for non-football related stuff, right?
Yeah, for inappropriate conduct in the building.
Right. Haven't won a road game since November 27th of last year, correct?
Right.
But your owner's in charge of picking the uniforms.
You've won 3 road games in the last 3 years, and the quarterbacks you faced in those games are Josh Dobbs, Sam Howell, Bailey Zappi, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're 14-34 in the last 48 games.
Don't forget Brian Hoyer, too.
I just, shame on me. How about that? How about I'll look inward and tell you that I knew that going forward with the head coach wasn't the right decision, as a lot of us did. I knew the offensive line wasn't good enough and said it. I knew the defense didn't have enough pass rush and said it. And I still said 9, then had a couple of gallons of Kool-Aid, went to 10. Shame on me, okay? Shame on me.
You can't be the Joel Osteen of Bears analysts and tell you that everything's going to be fine.
It's just like, this is what, I've gotten to the point, too. I think I was a little irritated after the 49ers game because I was expecting a more concerted, kind of a collective, fiery effort from everybody. And it was arguably the worst thing I saw with the expectations. That and the Patriots game. And again, I mean, against the Vikings, by the time we get to the Vikings on Monday night, you're just kind of beaten as a fan, and you see them struggle again in the first half. Look, I think the best thing I can say to you, Jonathan, is about this game on Sunday is you're catching the Lions as injured as any team on one side of the ball I think I've ever seen. They play better indoors than they do outdoors, but they're going to be focused because they're now in a dogfight to win the division. So I think you're going to get a concerted, solid effort from them. But you catch them in an environment where they're not 100% comfortable. What does that mean? It probably means they're going to lose their 9th straight, but there's as pretty of a picture as I can paint for you on Sunday. How about that?
Tommy, I asked you this yesterday. We had a nice discussion about it. In terms of looking at where the Bears are, if you said, wow, Matt LaFleur decided suddenly to retire. The Packers have a great culture. They have a really good developed quarterback. They'll go out and hire, the next OC type guy, and things will move along. They may not be as good because LaFleur is awesome. We don't have that. Our quarterback hasn't gotten to that level yet, A. B, the players in the room are saying, our culture is broken in here. It has to be fixed, and we have to have someone that comes in here and kicks ass. No more guys showing up late to meetings and all these different things. So do you feel like it has to be an offensive coach because of Caleb? Or, hey, man, if you tell me that, the Hoodie can hold everyone accountable and do a quality job as a coach,
I know
but
he
he's
does
a
it in
D
the morning.
coordinator.
He does that in the morning. He holds all your asses accountable.
He does. That is correct.
I don't no, Cap. I don't think that this is a one-size-fit-all type of thing. Now, I would ask you. Now, I've said this, and I'll be consistent. My preference is that I want to find, personally, selfishly, I want them to find their Matt LaFleur. I want them to find their Kevin O'Connell. I want them to find their Sean McVay. And because they have the first pick of the draft who plays the most important position in all of sports and a guy that I still really, truly believe in and thinks has a ton of talent, I would prefer that person be McVay or LaFleur or Kevin O'Connell. Am I married to that's the only way to do it? And by the way, I would say this. You can't tell me that Mike Vrabel had any better control of his locker room than Matt LaFleur does his. So, Matt LaFleur isn't just some quarterback whisperer.
Oh, no, I heard he could be a real SOB. He holds guys accountable.
Yeah, so, I'm not just searching for the hot new offensive coordinator who's a play caller. I have no idea if Ben Johnson can walk into a room and handle things the way that Matt LaFleur or Sean McVay or Kevin O'Connell has. I have no idea. But to me, if I could choose a path, that's the path I would go. If you told me that Mike Vrabel was coming in here with a qualified answer as offensive coordinator, yeah, I think it would be, I would definitely be on board for that, something like that, somebody that has a resume that is impressive. So I'm not locked into any one approach, but if you gave me my druthers, it would be, or you gave me my choice, it would be bring me my Matt LaFleur and let's go with Caleb Williams and let's build a team. I would say this too, Jonathan. I said this to Cap the other day, or maybe said it to both of you, because I thought Jonathan was pointing out that he's not, correct me if I'm wrong, not so sold that this roster is as good as everyone thought, including, all of us.
Yeah, it's not.
If I came in and was looking to kind of rebuild everything, I'd come in with a glass half empty versus a glass half full approach. Because I want to make sure that I'm not just walking into an environment where my conclusion is, whether it's Ryan going forward or somebody else, that this was just all a coaching problem. You need to look at all of everybody and decide whether or not this is the player that fits that role, and are we good enough across the roster. So I would just say, if it's Ryan or if it's somebody new that comes in, do it with a really, a close look at it to make sure you're not just hoping a new coach gets more out of guys.
If it ended today for Kirk Cousins and he wasn't going to start anymore, he would end his career with one playoff win in 13 years, earning $321 million. Not hating on the money, but one playoff win in 13 years, and now he's lost his job to Michael Penix in Atlanta. That says something.
Yeah, my guess is, too, I'll pay the fine, that, he would – I don't know, maybe not. I don't know Kirk at all. But I would guess you'd give up some of those millions for a better resume in terms of wins and losses. I do believe he wants to win. But that is pretty stark. It really is. So I think what does Andrew Brandt always say? He's in the Financial Pro Football Hall of Fame, or the whatever he calls it.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know you're a fan. That's why I brought it up, because
listen, I've always thought.
Yeah.
Look, Jonathan, I've always said that there are year in and year out. There's only a few guys that fit into that, franchise quarterback label. And then there's that second group where guys kind of ride the roller coaster. Some years you play at a level where you're really high, but some years you're down in that group, that second group. He's lived in that group. I've always thought he's a better quarterback maybe than some others, but I've felt the same way about Jared Goff, who is now getting recognized for doing, good things over the course of a longer period of time. I was always more of a fan of Matthew Stafford than others who thought his statistics were inflated. But it's hard to play this position at a high level over the course of a long period of time, and he's the one guy that has turned a less impressive career into more cash because he hit free agency. Most of these quarterbacks don't get a bite at that free agency apple. So Definitely his earnings don't match his resume. That's for sure. But he's had moments where he played really well.
The Business of Football Hall of Fame.
There you go. That's what I meant.
That's what he called it. Tommy, in terms of where the receiving room is today, you look at Tyler Scott, and he's basically been on a milk carton all season long.
Yeah.
I don't see a scenario that they're going to re-sign Keenan Allen. So they're going to have like $75 million or more in cap space. DJ Moore has had, in my opinion, a wildly underwhelming year, and Rome is a developing player who I think will be their best receiver. How urgent do you think there is for a need to get a top-level receiver?
I don't think there's an urge to get a top-level receiver. I agree with you. I think Rome will end up being their one. Still working on eliminating mistakes. He's got to catch that ball in the end zone. I think they had 4 or 5 drops. I think Keenan had 2 or 3 drops in that game, so they're not helping their quarterback as much as the quarterback is struggling as well. DJ has had a year statistically that is probably going to rank as his worst year in the league. I'm with you. It's been disappointing. He's always been my favorite player on the team. I see how hard he works in practice today. This year, it was off. It just didn't look right. A number of fronts. Maybe next year it will be better. I don't think, Cap, that they're going to be looking for a top line receiver. You know how I felt about Tyler Scott. I thought, young player, doesn't track the ball well, and that's kind of like, being a NASCAR driver that doesn't have good reflexes and doesn't take the turns, sharp. I mean, if you're a receiver in this league, you don't track the ball well. That's kind of, and you're a deep threat, that's kind of a prerequisite. But at this point, I'd be giving him snaps. Like, for what reason are you not seeing what you have? So that's odd to me. It's a blind spot for them in some ways. I mean, they used the 3rd-round pick on Velus. They used a 4th-round pick on Tyler Scott. They traded a 2nd-round pick for Chase Claypool. I mean, there are some questions there, that's for sure.
Tommy, with the injuries to the Lions, it's just an amazing story of how they're able to get to 12-2. But the point is that if you're Roger Goodell, you wish that Bills-Lions game was their Super Bowl game because everyone would love all those points on the board, right? Well, but now with the Lions' injuries, we for many weeks on here talked about how this should be the winner of the NFC. So if it's not Detroit, then who is?
I would have to say it's going to be the Vikings because they've got a 2-game lead on the Packers, and I believe haven't the Vikings beaten the Packers once this year? I think that the Packers have lost the games they've lost inside their division, haven't they?
Yeah, Vikings beat the Packers 31-29.
Yeah. So I would say that I just can't believe that with those injuries that they've had on defense that they're going to be able to get to the finish line ahead of the Vikings. But they play, I think, Week 18, Jonathan. I think it's the Lions and the Vikings. Let me see where it's at. It will be
17.
At home. It will be in Detroit. But they've got the Bears, then they go to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. They may be cashed by then. I don't know. Maybe the Lions do. Maybe the Lions and the Vikings get to that final game of the season with the same record. And at that point, this is what they wanted in the NFL, right? They wanted these late season division games to matter. That could be the best game we've seen in quite some time.
I mean, the belief from Dan Campbell on the ticket in Detroit the other day was just amazing. That he says, man, you got to go back to eating, molded bread. And I'm thinking, I don't want to go back to those days. That's when I was working nights.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to that, Tom.
Tommy, you've interviewed, you've done the Eberflus show with Sylvie. Hoodie and I have done it a billion times. It was like pulling teeth talking to that dude. Dan Campbell goes on that show to do his coach's show. He was wildly entertaining, dropped 2 F-bombs. Dude, I'm like, that's what a coach's show should be like.
Yeah, you're 100% right. There's an entertainment factor that totally exists. But, it's cute and funny when you're 12-2. You know what I mean?
Correct.
I'm not taking nothing away from him. I think he's a fantastic coach, and not everyone can be Dan Campbell. So if you walk into a room and you try to be Dan Campbell, it's probably going to fall flat. Dan Campbell, this is who he is. He's authentic. He's done a great job. He's assembled a good staff over the course of time. Those press conferences are wild, but if Dan Campbell's there, remember when he took the job and talked about biting kneecaps and everyone thought he was silly and a goofball?
Now they love him.
that's because he wins games and he's built a really good team and his coaching staff is excellent. So, you get those type. Everyone's slapping backs and giggling and having a good time when you're winning. If
Yes.
he's 2-12 and he's doing those press conferences, it's not nearly as entertaining. But
Yeah.
he's
More like a car crash.
yeah.
Well, back in the day, that rhetoric would have been a team that's 4-12.
Yes.
And like the lead on NFL films. Look at this wild coach. Look at Jerry Glanville leaving 2 tickets for Elvis. Yeah. Look at Sam White. Look at him. He's funny.
You don't live in Cleveland. You live in Cincinnati.
Yeah, but your team sucks. That's why it didn't resonate. It lands now because he's a meatball that wins. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and when you look, he doesn't get enough. He doesn't get enough credit in some ways, but he also, I think, at times people look at him and say, when you go onside kick with 12 minutes to go and you're only down 10, like that, I'm like, you get a pass because you're Dan Campbell and you're aggressive and you stay committed to your style. Doesn't mean that style doesn't have some flaws every now and again. That's all I would say.
There you go. By the way, were you at the snowball game when Sam Weiss addressed the crowd?
I don't think so. I was at the Freezer Bowl. I think
Yeah.
that's what it was called when the Chargers came to town. It was
Yeah.
Bengals and Chargers. My
47
brother and I
below
left
wind
it.
chill.
We left at halftime. We were a couple of babies.
You and Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't take it any longer. Went home and got. No, I'm just joking.
Don't you do that, Tommy. We've got kids listening. It's the morning show. Tommy, as always, we
We love you,
appreciate
Tommy.
the time.
All right, my man.